Chapter 14, The Paths Ahead. Let's wrap this up with a nice bow, I guess. So that saga ended, but not how any of us expected. It wasn't a bad ending for most of us. That's good, I'm glad I avoided the bad ending. Even so, I felt numb for days after. I think it just took a while for the reality to set in. That actually happened. I experienced all of it. It was a real thing. Being ingrained in this community of Espers was something I had already accepted, but now I was aware what sort of things I might face. Though I did hope this was a one-time thing. Either way, several brushes with death had cemented the reality of it all in a way nothing else had. And even though everyone considered this incident over, there was still a sliver of a chance it wasn't quite finished. They never found Brennan or Sylvia after all that, not even after clearing the rubble. I couldn't say whether or not that made me happy. Yeah, I feel that. Some of Brennan's people were taken into custody, some that had volunteered to help him. It was strange to learn not everyone helping him was being controlled. Strange and interesting. So he actually had some volunteers, so he doesn't necessarily have to control people. That's an active choice on his part. But their connections with him had been severed this time as well. What that meant, we didn't know. They'd been taken into custody by Endgame to be questioned about their time in the group known as the Host. There were no comatose people found at the scene, and some of his followers had disappeared. That alone cast doubt on whether Brennan was gone or if they'd retreated at the last minute. Endgame viewed Brennan as nothing more than a dangerous adversary, but my feelings about him were more complicated. They wanted information about him from me as well, something Kesa allowed me to provide because it was part of the deal. I did my best to relay my feelings about him. He was dangerous, yet he was also someone everyone had failed, including Endgame. And that was something someone would eventually have to take responsibility for. But that was out of my hands now, wasn't it? I let out a soft sigh as I leaned against the railing, looking out to the familiar hazy sky.
I figured you'd be up here.
It's become my favorite spot to think.
You do way too much thinking these days.
Thinking is a natural process for an evolved species, Jack.
Hilarious.
He slid behind me, wrapping his arms around my waist and setting his chin on my shoulder.
It's all over. You don't have to ruminate on it forever, Morgan.
I'm not used to things like this. I can't just move on like it didn't happen. I need time to ruminate.
You don't have to go on like it didn't happen, but you can't live in that moment forever. Sylvia used to say, "The future calls."
When he mentioned his sister, I turned in his arms, looking up at him seriously. And how are you doing with everything?
We've had this talk. I'm fine.
I know you say you are, but I just worry. You've been restless at night. He straightened, running his hand through his hair with a frustrated groan.
Oh, I can't stop the dreams. Mostly just stuff from the past. But I really am fine. Morgan, I said goodbye to Sylvia years ago. Seeing her again was a shock, but knowing his abilities. I know it wasn't really Sylvia by his side. Not the Sylvia I grew up with.
I still couldn't imagine how that must have felt, though. He leaned in and kissed my forehead.
You worry too much.
Someone has to worry about you. It's obvious you don't worry enough about yourself.
And how are you? Is your ruminating helping at all?
I'm still unsure how to take everything that happened. Brennan and Endgame both started out as adversaries, and neither ended up quite that way.
I don't know about that. Especially Brennan Raw.
I told you what he said to me, though.
I get it. I get that he helped us. If he hadn't provided a distraction they couldn't manage on their own, I don't know how things would have ended. As it was, he gave Kesa the leverage to negotiate. If he wanted to make himself into a villain, he did a damn good job of it. I'm just not sure why he did it.
Maybe it was to say thank you. I'm the one that freed him after all, whether or not I intended to.
A little irritating he's so attached to my girl because of that.
I don't think it's quite the same attachment you have to me.
Better not be.
Why, you worried? I mean, Brennan's sweet. I'm just kidding. Don't worry, Jack. You don't gotta worry about that. He was so weird sometimes.
So...
He leaned back and grinned.
Looking forward to seeing the new place tomorrow.
New place? A little. I'll miss Cordis, though. But I understand why I can't stay here anymore. I'm glad I'm staying in Delphine, though. Interesting. So we're leaving the court. That's sad. I'm gonna miss everybody.
Kesa's smart. I knew as soon as he said there was an agreement that he'd worked it out. Magnus is an asshole, but he's smart too. I'm glad they came up with something that helps you.
Oh?
I'm not totally thrilled with the liaison part, or that we may be working with them again in the future. But, in a way, it's helpful for both sides.
Did those two kings really work out a long-term agreement? Where it's like, they turn a blind eye, but they also get help? Because that would be an interesting setup.
And with their insistence you don't become a member of Crimson, and that you keep your distance, it gives Kesa an excuse to keep you far away from his father.
Well, I'll make Kesa happy.
I like that part a lot.
I'll admit it makes me curious about him. Kesa's father, I mean. But not curious enough to ever want to meet him.
I'm not sure we can prevent a meeting, but I'm glad we could put some distance between you and Crimson. I think Kesa's happy about it too. He had to bring you here under his father's orders, but he never wanted to drag you into that hellhole.
I'm a little sad I'll be moving to Pythia, though. I've become attached to Chestershire.
Works better with the backstory they've given you, doesn't it?
It does. And, of course, it makes going back to university much easier. Girls going back to school? Let's go! Going back to university wasn't a part of Kesa's agreement with Endgame, but it was something he arranged for my sake. At Jack's request. Aww. I love these boys. Since I was getting to stay, and that part was a part of his agreement, as Jack said, I had to distance myself from Crimson and the court. Officially, anyway. They couldn't stop me from involving myself in the court even if they wanted to. I was certain Magnus was aware of that. But he was satisfied with appearances on that front, as long as staying away from Crimson was real. The rest was payment for my helping them deal with Brennan and shut down what could have been a very serious incident in Pythia. I was a little surprised they were willing to go that far. I couldn't say what Kesa threatened. It seemed to have worked, though. In that regard, I probably should be even more grateful to Brennan. If he hadn't made himself such a significant threat, Jack was right. We'd never have had room to negotiate. It also helped that Kesa had maintained a strange relationship with Endgame for a while now. Well, not Endgame so much as Magnus. As a fellow king rank, I suppose. Yo, have our kings been secret friends all along? Guys? Have they been secret friends? How did I not find out about Kesa's secret friend in his route? Right? Did I read that right? Hold on. Yeah, for a while. I mean, unless this is like a long time after the fact. And it's like that was the starting point of their friendship. But otherwise I'm reading that as they've been secret friends. In which case I love that. Endgame was constantly at odds with Crimson, but Magnus and Kesa had interacted in a way that was, if not positive, at least neutral. Part of the reason Endgame kept their hands off the court was because of the odd sort of truce between them. Let's go. Taking out Crimson meant creating a dangerous power vacuum, which is why their skirmishes tended to be minor. And the court... that seemed to be out of respect for Kesa. at least in part. I'd had a very brief conversation with Magnus, and he had said one thing that stuck in my head. He said that times were changing, and even a monolith like Endgame had to change with it. He also said their council would not be happy with his decision to withdraw. I hoped he didn't get into too much trouble for his decision regarding me. I mean, maybe you guys gave him the confidence to stand up to them after all this time. I had a feeling that he answered to them only as much as he wanted to, though. That's a good point. At any rate, my unofficial position was as a sort of liaison between Endgame and the court. Okay. Endgame had difficulty moving around in Delphine without causing issues, but having allies here would help with that. I was to be the bridge between here and there. A pawn in a bigger game, as long as keeping me here caused fewer problems than trying to force me to go back to the dayside. I had assured him that would be the case. If only because I intended to fight going back with everything I had. Yay! Jack's passionate ending! There we go. You love to see it. At any rate, the cover story was that I'd come to Delphine to study, to finish my archaeology degree, and perhaps spend time studying the ruins here. That Erythros Industries had given me a scholarship to do so after having invested in Arayan research themselves and scouting some top students from the dayside to bring over. That's a great cover story. It was a lie Kesa had said could become reality someday, since, of course, Erythros was owned by his family, and there was a part of me that thought it would be fascinating. Arayan culture had never been my focus, but that didn't mean I'd easily pass up the chance. Even so, there was something I wanted to do more than that now. And there were areas of study I thought would be more beneficial to, well, everyone than my studying archaeology. After all, I had spent enough time in Chestershire that I couldn't just turn my back on it. On them. Kesa... Jack wanted to make it a better place, and I thought I could help. There weren't a lot of specialists in the community. There weren't people who had training and knowledge to implement actual solutions to their problems. I very much respected people like Celeste who fought to teach themselves useful skills. But if I had the opportunity to get in-depth knowledge on useful subjects, I was going to take it, even if I had to sneak the classes in for now.
Did you talk to your parents again today?
We've talked almost every day since Kesa gave me full permissions back. That had also happened, and it was just such a relief. I had sort of become used to not hearing from them or just ferrying messages through Kesa. To hear Mum's voice again had been difficult enough. I struggled not to cry the first time. Because I didn't want her to worry. I wanted her to be confident I was happy. And I sobbed in Jack's arms after that call. It hadn't been a bad call. It was just all the pent-up tension had released at once. I was relieved Mum hadn't heard it. It was difficult enough to get through the talk about why I hadn't trusted them with the information about being an Esper.
How are they feeling about your decision to stay?
I'm not a child anymore. They respect my choices. And I think they understand my options were limited. She's still curious about you, especially after talking to you last time.
That was the most terrifying 2 minutes of my life. I had no idea anyone could ask that many questions in that short a time.
You're more scared of Mum than of Kesa's dad. Amazing. You'll get used to her.
I wasn't expecting them to be... okay with me. I was a little surprised you wanted me to talk to them.
Why wouldn't they be? And why wouldn't I?
I'm Delphinian? I grew up in the slums. Even if they think I'm a legitimate bodyguard for the Fianchetto heir, surely they wanted you to find some... scientist or doctor?
You are a legitimate bodyguard, and they wanted me to find someone who makes me happy, which I have. Besides, there's the whole part where you kind of saved my life when people were after me. I think that earned you a few points.
I take it you left out the part about a criminal record.
For now, yes. I admit they might be horrified to find out I have anything at all to do with Crimson.
Well, thanks to Endgame, you officially don't.
But I'd never be ashamed to have them meet you. The fact I could even think about having my parents meet Jack made me happy. The slow feeling of things normalizing again was a relief.
So are you looking forward to seeing the place Case has arranged for you?
A little. Though I'll admit the idea of being on my own again is a little intimidating with everything that's happened.
Case has picked a good area. Very safe. And you won't be on your own. If I recall, there is a roommate planning to move in.
Ah, yes, my roommate. I smirked at him as I pulled him close for a quick kiss.
Case I wanted to send Carrie with you, I hope you realize. I had to fight hard to convince him to let me be your bodyguard.
I'll have to apologize for stealing his right-hand man.
Don't. His right-hand man very much wanted to be stolen.
I suspect he might be offended if he heard that.
It's good to be offended occasionally.
He kissed me this time, a slow and lingering gesture with a hint of heat to it. Somehow, the thought of how fragile it all was lodged itself in my heart as he held me. I held him tighter, almost afraid he'd vanish right then and there. Jack let out a pleased noise, and I soon found myself pressed against the railing as the kiss became more frantic. Oh, right. Ending chapter. Passionate ending. Probably more fun times coming your way soon, TM? Aw, that's a sweet picture. I love that. Cute. He eventually pulled away, resting his forehead against mine, a smile gracing his lips. His warm breath fluttered across my cheek as he let out a sigh. We stayed on the roof a long time before going back inside, and this time we didn't have to hide from the rain. I hadn't acquired that many things since arriving in Chestershire, just a meager amount of clothes, and they were mostly folded into a small bag by the time Jack came to find me again. When we came down from the roof, Celeste had wanted to talk to him for a few minutes, so I came to our room alone to finish up with packing. I heard him come in a couple of minutes after me and glance back just as he wrapped his arms around me from behind, pressing his face to the back of my neck. I need to finish packing.
There's not that much left. It can wait.
That's what I came downstairs for!
It's not what I came downstairs for.
I could hear the grin in his voice as he kissed the side of my neck, letting his hands roam over my torso before dipping down to find the edge of my shirt. At the feel of his warm fingertips against my skin, I couldn't quite hold in the little gasp. It's not like the packing is going anywhere, but still. Jack, One hand snaked back out of my shirt, covering my mouth playfully.
You sure you want to stop, Butterfly?
The nickname, which he had called me almost exclusively when we met, now only resurfaced when he was teasing me. That's true, I forgot that he hadn't called her Butterfly in so long. That's cute. I like that he reserves it for teasing now. He really was such a brat. I pried his hand away, tipping my head back to look at him. If I said I did, would you listen?
I'll always do whatever you want to do, Morgan. Always.
I guess the packing can wait. A victorious grin spread across his face as he settled against my back again, nudging me closer to the bed. And she's disappeared again. This time his hand swept the zipper down the front of my jacket before quickly unbuttoning the front of my shirt. I braced myself against the bed with one knee as Jack's lips returned to my neck, then the top of my shoulder. His hand settled just at the bottom of my ribs as his lips trailed to my shoulder blade, then traced down the length of my spine to the small of my back.
Do you know how much I love you? I never thought I'd find someone like you.
I swiveled in his arms and, unable to find words, caught his face in mine to give him a fierce kiss. His body heat seeped into me through his shirt, and I leaned against him as he wrapped his arms around me to hold me closer. My skin, cooled by the chilly air, began to warm up again. Jack shed his shirt and pulled me close, his bare skin burning against mine. He cupped my face to kiss me intensely, but as I wound my arms around him to keep him close, his hands slid down my sides, exploring everywhere. I let out a low gasp as his lips found the hollow of my throat, at the same time his fingertips brushed over the base of my spine, then traced a soft, fiery path up my back. As his mouth moved down, his tongue moving in little circles over my skin, Jack pushed me down against the mattress. For a moment, he held himself above me with his dark hair falling in his eyes. His expression was hungry as he lowered his gaze again, sliding his hands beneath me to lift me to his lips. Every inch of skin prickled with anticipation as his palms pressed against me, gliding down hot and greedy. Heat started in my core, spiraling outward with every kiss or caress. My breaths were coming in ragged gasps that only spurred Jack onward. He eased off the rest of my clothes, his mouth never moving away from me. And finally, Jack caught my leg, turning his head to plant a gentle kiss to my knee, then another further up the inside of my thigh. A shiver ran through me at the sight of his tongue flicking out to trace a path upward. His eyes caught the light, gleaming faintly. They never left my face. My breath caught in my throat as I bit my lower lip and watched him. Then a soft moan escaped, and I let my head fall back as I gave myself up to the sensation of his mouth against my skin. My fingers found his hair gripping tight as a cry escaped me. Beneath the force of his lips and tongue, his soft breaths whispering across me, it felt like my body would break apart. Jack shifted, moving to place a kiss on my navel, then between my breasts, my neck, my mouth. Still gripping his hair, I kissed him hungrily, filled with need for him. His entire body was pressed against me, both pinning me in place and sending heat rippling through me when his hips nudged mine. Somehow, it was like no matter how much time I spent with him like this, it would never be enough. For these moments and all that followed, I could let him be my entire world and forget everything else, and it always felt completely right in every way. Long after, I was thinking I should finish packing our things, but instead I was lying with my head against Jack's shoulder while he played with my hair. I had laid in this room so often listening to the rain with Jack, and now there was only stillness and silence. No more rain.
Are you ready?
I am, though it's a little weird to be saying goodbye so soon.
Not like you'll never be back here. Though I think you're better suited to where you're going. You weren't made for a place like this.
Neither were any of you. That's why I intend to make it a lot better going forward. He smirked at me.
You sound like Kesa when you say that.
Well, I look forward to it. Not sure that gardens and libraries are going to save us all, but
Those aren't the only plans I have, but I think you'll find that infrastructure fixes and public services benefit everyone. We're a ways from that yet, but we'll get there.
Man, this place is going to get busy again, isn't it?
Not for a while yet. But now that I didn't have to hide anymore, I might be able to be more proactive. And I wasn't Kesa. I didn't have his same limitations. That was sure to be helpful too.
I hope you don't forget about this place once you're gone.
Never.
Okay. Come on. She's not even going that far away. Calm down. But we are meeting Kay in Pythia, so it's time to go.
Rowan surprised me with a hug! And Celeste surprised me even more when she followed suit. Yay, hugs! After a round of goodbyes to everyone else, we went out to where Jack's car was waiting. Jack took my bag and tossed it in while I paused to look around one last time. It wasn't a beautiful tour spot or anything, but it did kind of grow on a person.
I can't deny I feel a little guilty still. That you're staying here instead of, I don't know, going back to New Albion.
You're going to have to get over that, because I'm not going anywhere. This world is mine too now.
I'm glad, because it's a hell of a lot better with you in it.
I leaned up to kiss him before we climbed in his car and started to Pythia. I couldn't help but smile as I settled into the seat. It felt like another beginning, but this one I was greatly looking forward to. Yay! You weren't forced into it this time! That was lovely. The only thing I'm sad about is that we didn't get to say goodbye to Rory. I was like, and Rory came to say goodbye too, right? And Rory said goodbye too, right? Aw. No goodbye for Rory. I'll assume he was busy teaching kids at the time. Yes, that's what I will hope for. I really enjoyed that. There was, like, especially plot-wise, I think that was my favorite for overall plot. Definitely so far, out of the three. I enjoyed Jack as a romance as well. I'm trying to figure out how he stacks against the other two for me. I'm gonna have to do a lot of thinking. I don't know. My gut feeling right now is that Ari still wins for me for romance so far, but I wonder if that's not in part because I was annoyed at Jack during Case's route and I still hadn't quite got over it after getting through this. I'll be honest, it may be playing a part. It may be playing a small part. But that's fine, because he's a brat, as Morgan said. And we do love our brats. He was a lot of fun. And him and Morgan are very similar. But they seem to be working things out pretty good between the two of them, which is nice. I also thought it was really cute that they're gonna, like, have their own place and be able to work things out. And things are looking the most up for the world at large at the end of this. With Endgame and the court working together, all in all. So I'm like, you know, it's pretty encouraging. And Brennan and I was gonna say Brennan and Sylvia are still alive, but then I'm like, Sylvia, like, is she alive? But she was able to reach out, kinda? I don't know. I still have so many questions at the end of this route. Ooh, we get blue-haired Jack in the menu. Delightful. I was wondering which version of you we were gonna get. Blue hair. He did say he was gonna dye it back, so I guess that checks out. Blue hair Jack is true Jack. The blue is true and all that. Wonderful. Well, guys, thank you very much for joining me. I hope you enjoyed Jack's passionate ending. I certainly did. I thought it was very sweet. And we didn't even get a sweet end yet. Well, I think the sweet end is sweeter. Important questions. We'll have to find out next time when I do Jack's sweet ending. And then I think he has 2 bad endings for sure, but I kind of have a sneaking suspicion he's got 3 bad endings from what I remember, so there's still some Jack stuff that we gotta do before we move back to Bandcamp Boyfriend, so hopefully you can join me for that. But either way, thank you for joining me for this. Until next time, I will see you later.